In 1960, two Indian sisters arrived in America wearing identical clothes and sharing identical views, with the exact same plan: get their degrees and move back home. But their paths instantly fractured. Bharati broke caste tradition and married an American, while Meera married an Indian to maintain her heritage. Over the next 35 years, Bharati actively erased her past, trading saris for blue jeans and becoming a naturalized citizen. Meanwhile, Meera stubbornly held on to her Indian citizenship, living as a permanent resident, anchored in her traditional culture. Then, a crisis tested them both. Congress pushed to strip government benefits from legal immigrants. Bharati felt perfectly secure in her new American identity, but Meera felt betrayed and discarded by a country she had given her entire career to. Furious, Meera chose a cynical rebellion. She decided to get U.S. citizenship purely to protect her benefits, with the ultimate goal of renouncing it and returning to India. And those two identical sisters who arrived in America with the exact same plan, they proved that surviving a new country forces you to pay one of two painful prices: the trauma of completely erasing who you were, or the heartbreak of never truly belonging. How did a 1971 essay called "I Want a Wife" use pure satire to shatter traditional gender norms? Back then, the crushing unpaid domestic labor expected of women was completely normalized and entirely invisible. The spark came when Brady's divorced male friend casually mentioned he was looking for a new wife to manage his life. So Brady, already a wife and mother, adopted the male perspective and declared that she too would like a wife to make things easier. She starts building a contract with the physical baseline, demanding endless child-rearing, cooking, cleaning, and financial support. But the logistical chores were just the beginning. The contract also required impossible emotional labor, managing his social calendar, remaining sexually available, and never, ever complaining. By stripping away the illusion of romance and reducing marriage to this massive list of demands, the traditional role was exposed as an exploitative job rather than an equal partnership. Brady proved that the 1970s ideal wasn't about love. It was a one-sided servant contract. And today, when we debate the unequal mental load in modern relationships, we are still fighting this exact impossible job description. Every day at 12:03 p.m., a black junior high student actively avoided his school's all-black lunch table. He was terrified of losing his white friends, convinced this table was fueling the school's bigotry. This created a brutal social trap. His black peers viewed him as a traitor, hurling insults like Oreo. Meanwhile, his white classmates relentlessly questioned why he wasn't sitting with the other black kids. In his teenage mind, that single table was the ultimate barrier to true integration. 14 years later, he returned for a class reunion and was crushed to find the exact same all-black table stubbornly persisting. But looking closer, he finally noticed a massive blind spot in his memory. Every single demographic in the room had been rigidly self-segregating the entire time. There was a table for athletes, a table for middle-class Irish kids, an Italian table, and a Jewish boys' table. Yet nobody ever questioned or condemned the segregated nature of those white ethnic tables. Only the black students' table attracted intense scrutiny and societal wrath. He realized the table he spent his entire childhood desperately avoiding wasn't some hostile rejection of integration. It was just a natural human search for shared experience and safety, exactly like everybody else in the room. The air conditioner is the ultimate modern paradox. The machine we use to escape the heat is actually making our world hotter. Here are the hidden costs of our reliance on artificial cooling. First up, the urban heat loop. Air conditioners don't destroy heat, they just move it. Pumping waste heat outdoors raises city nighttime temperatures by over 1 degree Celsius. This forces everyone to crank up their AC even more. Next, sick building syndrome. Poorly maintained ACs become breeding grounds for bacteria and mold. They circulate these pathogens straight into office buildings. Worse, they dry out the air, dehydrating the mucous membranes that protect your immune system. Third, a massive climate footprint. The synthetic gases inside these machines frequently leak. They trap far more heat than carbon dioxide. These gases are called hydrofluorocarbons. By 2050, cooling will account for 10% of global greenhouse emissions. Finally, passive cooling. We can cool buildings through architectural design instead of energy-heavy machines. Ancient techniques like green roofs, thermal mass, and strategic cross-ventilation. These nature-based designs drop indoor temperatures by several degrees without using fossil fuels. True climate resilience isn't about building sealed artificial glass boxes that fight the environment. It means returning to architecture that actually breathes and works in perfect harmony with the natural world. For author Sandra Cisneros, being the only daughter among 6 brothers meant one thing: constant isolation. She used that loneliness to write, launching a lifelong quest to win her traditional father's approval. He believed a college education for a girl was only useful for finding a professional husband. But Cisneros weaponized his low expectations, using his lack of interest in her English major as a shield. Even after securing major publishing deals and prestigious fellowships, she couldn't win his pride. His hands were thick and calloused from decades of physical labor, and his reading material, only Spanish-language sports magazines and sensational tabloids. 10 years into her career, she finally bridged this cultural divide. Visiting home, she sat by her ailing father's bed and handed him an anthology. Inside was her story, newly translated into his native Spanish. He muted the television and began to read it slowly, line by line. As he turned the pages, he recognized the familiar Mexican neighborhoods and characters from his own childhood. When he finally finished, he looked up and asked a single question: "Where can we get more copies of this for the relatives?" Her ultimate validation wasn't a prestigious award. It was the moment her traditional father finally understood her. Every psychology textbook claims that 38 people watched Kitty Genovese get murdered from their windows and did absolutely nothing. But this famous cautionary tale is a complete lie. The story terrified the public. It proved that large crowds make individuals less likely to help in an emergency, a phenomenon now known as the bystander effect. Decades later, researchers Rachel Manning, Mark Levine, and Alan Collins opened the original 1964 court transcripts. They discovered the 38 apathetic witnesses never existed. The street's physical layout made it impossible for dozens of people to even see the attack, and several neighbors actually did intervene by shouting at the attacker and trying to call for help. So where did the myth come from? Frustrated police. Operating without a centralized emergency number, cops fed the exaggerated story to the New York Times to deflect blame from their own disorganized and delayed response. But the massive public outrage over this fabricated story of neighborly apathy became the direct catalyst for the United States government to create the 911 call system. The ultimate symbol of human apathy was actually a police cover-up. But the outrage over that lie accidentally gave us a system that saves millions of lives. How does a woman who toiled her entire life officially have 0 job experience? In Bonnie Smith Yackel's essay, My Mother Never Worked, we see how institutions erase unpaid domestic labor because the system defines work strictly as wage earning. Take the mother in the essay. She spent half a century surviving droughts, managing a farm, and raising 8 children. The story is framed around her daughter calling the Social Security office to claim death benefits. But watch what happens on the government's official work ledger. On the physical side, her daily survival labor piles up rapidly. But look at the formal wage column. It stays completely empty. Because capitalist systems strictly measure wage labor done for a boss, her massive economic contribution is completely erased from the record. So the agent returns to the phone and denies the claim. What about those 50 years of relentless, back-breaking survival labor? The government officially wiped the ledger clean, recording absolutely nothing.